All right. As promised in my last talk, Oblivion Cult. Oblivion Cult is our most recent movie. And it's fascinating. When I made the decision to go back and start talking about a lot of these film and television projects that I've produced and directed over the decades, I was going to start from the beginning. And then it occurred to me I really should talk about Oblivion Cult first. And the reason that I should talk about Oblivion Cult first is that something remarkable, I think, happened during its evolution. Now, I've been fascinated with this idea of liminal spaces for a long time. And I think, especially given what the world is experiencing now and the phase, the cycle, the spot on that circle of life in which we are all somewhat captive right now, is important because I feel that we are, in fact, in a liminal space. Now, a liminal space is a transition point between two different things, two different worlds, an evolution into something else, but it's that middle ground. You can think of it as a kind of limbo. It isn't necessarily bad. It isn't necessarily good. It just sort of is. This is a liminal space. It's that transition moment. It can be depressing. It can be highly challenging. It can be extraordinarily confusing. You know what I mean when I say confusing. That's a liminal space. And the reason that I was infatuated with liminal spaces is that it's an emotion, it's a feeling. And I think that we all go through this. And I think especially now, we're all feeling a kind of overwhelming liminal space. Typically in the past, folks who produced works, independent films that were liminal space, subgenre, will enter into worlds that are vacant of humans, normal worlds, malls, things like that are shut down or closed, but there are no humans. And there's a sort of a haunting vibe, a haunting quality that comes with it. So since I spend such extraordinary amount of time in really remote places, mostly in the American Southwest, where we will often stumble upon old abandoned homesteads, sometimes ghost towns, quite often abandoned ghost camps where mining was happening in the late 1800s and the early 1900s in the wild west of America. We experience places that feel and are basically our liminal spaces where the people are gone. And so my idea was, well, I've always wanted to make a movie that didn't require any actors, no talent, that was all about space. If we go way back for you old-time gamers out there, you may remember this video game Myst, long time ago. I'm not a gamer, but that one fascinated me because you were basically weaving your way through this abandoned world on this island, and there were such strange and interesting facilities that have been built and abandoned, and you have to solve riddles, blah, blah, blah. At any rate, a lot of these places that we go to are very much that. They're liminal spaces. And another component to that is this overwhelming feeling of that these places where the seeding ground for humans of the past and their dreams. And I think what a lot of times becomes overlooked in these places is the realization that no matter how devastated these places are due to abandonment and the weather and so forth, the deterioration, the atrophy, that these were the places of fellow human beings and their dreams. They bled for these places. They cried for these places. They had dreams of grandeur. The effort, the labor it took for some of these places is extraordinary. And when we walk among these ruins, I think sometimes we forget that. To us, they're just ruins. But the truth is what underlies these ruins is something really special. And I don't want to forget that. I don't want to forget that these places are where dreams lived. They were alive. So I chose a few places that I knew of in the desert, really remote, old homesteads that had been long since abandoned. And I thought, well, let's just do a POV mounted camera and walk among it and see what happens and just explore and create something that feels liminal. It was supposed to be a movie about that feeling. Well, it wasn't to be. As some of you in the creative arts may know, who've been around it for a while and who have had a lot of experiences, in my case, decades, hopefully you reach a point where you learn to allow the art or whatever your thing it is, filmmaking, music, painting, crafting, whatever it is, to evolve and become what it wants to become. And that's what happened. On the surface, I drove off to these places to create a Liminal Spaces movie by myself. Well, that layer was not going to exist on its own, whether I knew it or not. And so what happened was, in one of these spaces, and I won't name locations because we want to keep these places protected, but one of these locations, what I found out with some research after I had filmed some things out there, was that it had been a homestead, an area where homesteads were created in the early 1900s, 1906, 1907, etc. Very remote desert landscapes. And they were trying to populate these areas to get crops growing and things like this. And so what they did was, it was centered out of, I think, Southern California, Los Angeles area. Land grants were given, and they were taken to these African-American communities because they wanted to give them an opportunity to have their own places, their 40 acres and a mule, if you will. And so they gave these away, and some of these folks took up the offer and went out there and started to try to grow their plants and build their homesteads in their life. And what happened was, when they began this process was a particularly wet point in time in terms of the weather, a lot of rain. But after 3 or 4 years, drought kicked in. And the normal weather patterns also became an issue in that there wasn't that much rain. And so they failed. No water. They collapsed. And so what some of these people did is they went to the white ranchers who were on the outskirts of them, who had wells, who had water, who had all these things, and asked for help. And they were summarily declined. They were turned away. Now, I won't speak to whether that was racism or not. I don't know. However, they were absolutely turned away. And I thought this was haunting. I thought that this was, wow, what a strange situation. And then it occurred to me that I should build this into my little Liminal Spaces story somehow, that this was the place. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I don't want to spoil Oblivion Cult for you too much because you might want to see it. Quick note. This is not a movie for someone who needs constant dopamine hits. If you're going to watch Oblivion Cult, you need to prepare yourself for an experience, which means it has to evolve. It's going to be a little bit slower to begin, and it's going to move along at a pace that it wants. But I guarantee you there's some imagery that emerged in this process that was remarkable, and I couldn't have predicted this is the direction it was going to go. At any rate, this location where these events happen evolved into something that became a reflection of us, a reflection of humanity. It became a reflection of this idea of good intentions gone bad, of this idea of the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's really what it became. But more importantly, what happened was some elements emerged. And I did create these elements using artificial intelligence, using AI, because there was no other way to do it. And also, I was trying to keep it very, very simple. But the way I was able to prompt those pieces really rocked me. And the reason that they rocked me and became profound is when I was creating all of that was long before, certain world events that we're all dealing with right now happened. And information about our true past happened. And I had no idea, but it just came to me. It came to the project. It was a vibration or a frequency out there in the the field floating around, and through this movie, it came into the movie, and those elements, and they are dark, and they are horrific, are there. I didn't anticipate that. I didn't plan that. It just came. It just happened. There was no single seminal moment where I thought to myself, hey, why don't I do this? It just happened. And I think that taking me out of the equation, and any artist or anyone who's paying attention to the world, or trying to pay attention, or paying attention to frequency and vibration, what's happening around us, those of us who are trying to see past the veneer of the bullshit, frankly, it comes. I really believe it comes. And I really believe that whatever this energy field, call it God, whatever the hell you want to call it, okay? Label it however you want to label it. I'm going to call it something like a field of possibilities, happens. If the conduit is open, if you take your pipe of thought and creativity and you open it up, it'll come. And this also plays into the idea, the Stoic idea, or actually I don't know if this is a Stoic idea. But anyway, Alan Watts, the great Alan Watts, talked about this a lot. And that is that taking away your attachments. Don't become attached to your outcomes. Don't say, I am going to make this movie. I am going to build this house. I am going to construct this thing. And this is exactly what it will be, period. The minute you do that, you've closed your pipe. You've closed the process of possibilities, or the possible outcomes that are out there. How's that? You've closed it, because there might be things you're not thinking. Well, there definitely are things that you're not thinking about or considering that will help this thing you're doing evolve into something magnificent. And that's exactly what happened. And I was pretty blown away. And it got dark and it got heavy. And I'm sure that embedded within that were some of my experiences that I've had in really wild and crazy places and crazy situations. However, it is profound, and there is no denying that what Oblivion Cult became was something very unusual. And on its face value, it's not a traditional narrative. It's a journey. And in the end, I think it speaks clearly to some of our illusions. And I think when we embrace some of these illusions and see it, it can give you a kind of clarity that might make things a little bit easier for you to understand. Now, I could be completely wrong, so don't listen to a damn word I say. I think it's profound, but that doesn't mean it is. It's just my thoughts. My old dear friend, Willie Whitefeather, he was a Cherokee medicine man many years ago, would always start his talks with, don't believe a thing I say, because I'm just a man talking. I have no idea. And that applies here too. So I think it's profound. I think what happened was remarkable because I didn't do it. It just happened. It just happened. And when I brought Tabitha in to play a role, and then Josie, and then Danny Turner in to play the little bits and pieces towards the end of the movie. It just all came together. And without those elements, it wouldn't have come together like it was. So it was magic, truly magic. Okay, so there are wild things happening in this world. I went out to make a Liminal Spaces movie. It took me over a year to make it. It's out now. Something happened where messages are embedded in the movie that I didn't expect, which are very poignant right now. And so if that interests you, go check it out. This isn't a commercial. It's just a talk about allowing the world, allowing the energy of creativity to do its thing without you harassing it, without you confining it. Don't confine it. That's the message. Let the thing evolve the way it wants to evolve. It will. It will. But it takes patience and it takes courage, because you have to let go of your babies. You do. An old adage in movies, you got to let go. Eventually, when you're in the editing process, you have to let your baby go. It's very important. And that's what you do. You let it go. And it can turn into something really interesting. If nothing else, it's unique. And Oblivion Cult is not really like any other movie I think you'll ever see. I have it on Vimeo right now. It's a special edition. There's bonus behind the scenes in there that you can get that you aren't going to get when you watch it on Tubi and things like that. It's not out on AVOD, on Tubi, or any of the other platforms, Amazon or Apple TV yet. We have submitted, but it is available now on Vimeo at this date, which is March of 2026. Future date, check Tubi and all those and see if we've got it up on there. And it's on our website, psychoactivecircus.com. So psychoactivecircus, one word.com. You'll find the link. You'll find the poster there for the movie and some thoughts. And by the way, my fine art photography gallery site is oronaart.com. So if you want to check that out and see what I'm talking about when I talk about these crazy wild adventures and thousands of days of solitude and wilderness and all that, that's all there. You'll get it. I don't need to even talk about that. Just go look at the images. So thank you. I appreciate your time. Hopefully there was a morsel or two of wisdom thrown in there somewhere. And we'll talk to you next time.